Have you ever walked inside a cathedral? When I was younger, I visited several churches in Germany. I was shown the back roads and saw Bavaria in western Germany. Rothenburg, Koblenz, and the Greek Cathedral of Cologne are just of the few places I saw. Most cities and towns here have a church built right in their heart. On an early Sunday morning, while the streets outside are bustling with vendors, the cathedral looms over, guardians of older time, of faith that has morphed throughout the century. When a cathedral is empty, between sermons, there is a ghostly, spiritual feel to it. You can hear the footsteps in the distance. Echoes are alive in this solemn house. The small candlelight lures you in, and the scent of incense takes you to an older time. One can easily understand the impact of such grand structures these houses of God have had throughout the ages. In the wake of Rome's shadow, after the fall of the empire, Christianity rose and spread throughout Europe. It encountered ancient faiths, people deep in their folk beliefs of the cold north and the east. It found old gods of nature and the countryside. It came face to face with Samhain. This is part 2 of Understanding Halloween, Christianity and All Hallows Day. These pagan traditions ran deep, bonfires to light the year, stories passed down throughout generations, offerings for spirits and ghosts, and feasts for the dead. These were customs of light and life, of the changing seasons and the very crops of the earth. These customs were connected to the seasons, to the people, to their history. The church realized that these traditions, centuries or millennia old, could not be so easily erased. So they adapted to the people so that the people would adapt to them. Christianity transformed the environment. They changed the setting. The old sacred oak, the sacred stones, they were all taken down and replaced by a church. In the 7th century, All Saints' Day was established. It was a day to honor the saints and martyrs of the Christian faith. The original date for this day was probably in May. It wasn't until the 9th century that Pope Gregory IV moved this day to November the 1st. This way it coincided more with the fall celebrations of the pagans, with Samhain. The night before November the 1st was the eve of All Saints' Day, known as All Saints or All Hallows Eve. Over the centuries, and between whispers and retellings of old times, and between the growth of languages, shifting tongues, and changing times, All Hallows Eve became contracted to Halloween by the 18th century. Despite the church's best effort to erase pagan ways by slowly incorporating them into the church, the people of medieval Europe still felt a pull towards the old ways, towards the old gods. The veil between the living and the dead was still believed to be thin as All Hallows Eve approached. Souls of the departed were said to wander the earth, to remain, seeking prayer, salvation, forgiveness, or something more sinister. During this time, a new tradition emerged called souling. Lower class, or children, would go door to door offering prayers for the dead in exchange for food or for soul cakes, small, sweet, and spiced cakes blessed with a cross. Before, offerings were left out for spirits, and some disguised souls would take advantage of this. Now the tradition changed, and offerings were given to those who offered a prayer. Over time, these traditions would twist and merge, changing the prayer into a song, then into a jingle, and the soul cake became a treat. These were the earliest seeds of trick-or-treating. While our modern Halloween is still ages away from this medieval age, we begin to see the echoes form little by little. At this time of darkness, of superstition, of faith and fear, All Hallows Eve became a night to ward off demons and honor saints and those who passed away. The Middle Ages were ripe with stories of supernatural beings. Take a look at a medieval bestiary. It is an unseen world of warped humans, anthropomorphized animals, a world of ghosts, spirits, demons, and the souls of the restless dead. These gave birth to the stories that would one day haunt the coming centuries. Long ago in Greece, those who died and were not giving coin to pay the ferryman would come back as ghosts. In the Middle Ages, ghosts were now understood to be the souls of those undeserving of heaven, ignored by hell. They were trapped in purgatory, unable to move on until they were cleansed. Healers and shamans of the ancient woods were now considered consorts to the devil, gathering in secret unholy nights of madness around this season. Witch hunts took root. Long gone were the noble wizards of old or the wise druids. Now magic users were hunted down. These hunts were fueled by fear and misguided self-righteousness about the natural world. They became symbols of control and oppression, of fanaticism and madness. The goddesses of magic were lost, the old magic of nature demonized. The lycanthrope, once a symbol of wild pagan magic, a man cursed by Zeus himself, was now a dreaded werewolf, a cursed man unleashed on the full moon. They would lose their sanity and wreak havoc upon the townspeople and upon their loved ones. It became a being of sin, savagery, and unquenched, uncontrollable rage. The vampire, beings that absorb strength through others, they were conscious undead, evil creatures that feast in the blood to retain youth. They became symbols of repressed desires, beings unable to stand in the light. They were corrupt souls feeding upon the living who collapsed at the sight of the cross. Other beings, such as the little people, goblins, sprites and pixies, trolls and dragons, and many more, became odd and twisted versions of their old pagan counterparts. They became creatures of guilt, sin, folklore, untamed nature, barren lands, and uncontrollable emotions. They wandered the woods of Bavaria, the Northlands, the untamed realm beyond human civilization. They became the shadows that walked amongst the holy, causing harm to Christian souls, stealing their children, harming their warriors, possessing the holy, and reanimating the dead one way or another. As the Middle Ages progressed, autumn continued to be a season of reflection and fear. The Church encourages prayers not just on All Hallows Day, but on the following day as well, All Souls Day, celebrated on November the 2nd. All Souls Day was a day to remember those who were lost, those who perished. And with the three celebrations together, the Hallowtide was born. However, as these traditions became the dominant ones in the Church, in the countryside of Europe, amongst flickering flames in wide fields and dark forests, people still lit lanterns to ward off spirits. Some of these lights in the dark were a trick by the Fae. Others believed it may have been a lost soul. In Ireland, faces were carved into turnips to keep away the wandering dead, and charms were held to their magical properties. The world had not forgotten Samhain. It simply took on a new disguise. Halloween continued to evolve. From the Celtic Samhain to the Church's All Hallows, this celebration endured the hands of time, stuck between opposing worlds, the world of the holy and that of the folk, of the deep past and its new medieval age. However, this isn't where Halloween's story ends. As time progresses, as centuries pass, the eve of All Hallows takes on darker tones. Next time we shall remain in the tide of All Hallows and explore stories of folk and get to know the man who tricked the devil and has wandered the earth since. Thanks for watching.